How about you jump in with your I
Can you
statement?
repeat, can you repeat that question, please?
What is your I statement? Can you introduce yourself?
Thank you. I am Tamitha Woodhouse. I am the principal of Renaissance Academy. I am a mother. I am a daughter. I am a sister. I am an advocate for youth. I am a citizen of Baltimore City. I am an educator. I am also a doctoral candidate. I am I am leading towards freedom for my family.
Thank you. Jefferson, what about you?
There we go. Okay. I am heard now. How about that? I'll start with that. I am from Baltimore. I am an actor, a son, a brother, an uncle, a friend, an artist, an artist of the community, a sociologist. I am an actor with Everyman Theatre's resident company of artists and founder of Galvanize, a community building network for artists of color. And I am honored and thrilled to be here, especially on this day of celebration, Juneteenth.
Thanks, Jefferson. Jamira, what
Good,
about you?
good afternoon, everyone. I am Jamira Queen, a recent high school graduate, a Healing Youth Alliance ambassador, and I would like to think of myself as a mental health advocate for youth, also a mentor, and I am on many different organizations across Baltimore City centered around youth and many things that we live through. And I love to use my perspective to help it as much as possible. And I am an aspiring social worker, by the way. So, yeah.
Great. Okay, we're going to try to steal you over to University of Maryland. I'm sure of that. Bronwyn, can you bring us all home with your introduction? Who are you today?
Hey, Dr. Nay or Dr. Nadine, we've been friends a long time. I'm Bronwyn Maiden. I'm a community activist. I'm a mother of two young men. I'm also, I feel, a friend of Tammy Woodhouse, who is, I think, one of the finest principals and I know her from Baltimore City Public Schools, but we have been partners for a couple of years now in terms of work. And I also am really pleased to tell you that I am an assistant dean at the School of Social Work, but also the very proud director of Promise Heights, a place-based initiative that's been working in the community of Upton Druid Heights for over 10 years with the goal of trying to get as many young people in that neighborhood to graduate from high school, be ready for college. But we don't do it alone. We work with schools and a whole lot of other organizations to really try to develop a pipeline of services from the very beginning of life all the way to help support these young people as well as parents, as well as schools. So thank you. And I'm pleased to be here today. And I think the other thing I have to say is that I have to say that we are here and bringing this in partnership with Everyman Theatre because of the support that we were able to get from the Kaiser Permanente Foundation, as well as the Annie E. Casey Foundations. I have to shout out my other partners there. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Bronwyn. Thank you very much. So everyone, let's get into our discussion today about the play, about how we felt about it. Because it is a play, so it is art. It's theater arts. And as artists, we work to honor the truth of the characters that we portray. We honor our character's journey, whether that character is the quote unquote hero or underdog or villain or what have you. We marry the text with our own lived experience and we make it our own. That's what you do as an artist, right? The text, though, is our compass. It's our lead line through. And so today, for this essential conversation, I want us to start at the text. Let's start there. So I want to invite each panelist to share a moment from this story, this pipeline story that resonated deeply with you, and why? Why did that moment have a personal impact for you? So I'm going to invite you, Tamitha, to start with what textual piece resonated most with you. You're muted, Tamitha.
All right. The mom really came out to me personally when she stated, I have tried, like religiously, like an ongoing prayer to protect you. I have tried to buffer you from it all. I've tried to free you and free you. Follow instructions from your father, from your mothers, from other mothers, from my own mother, from whoever. And I don't have the answer. This resonated with me not only as a high school principal, but also as a parent of 3 African American males. And the prayers that I send out every day to make sure that they're covered when they go out into these streets. And how I do try to buffer them and make sure that the wickedness that they see as African American males do not suck them in. And I try and I send those prayers, and I also call because I was a single African American mom, so I had to find men within the community that would put their arms around us and help give me some guidance on how to raise 3 Black boys. And so that prayer and that trying to buffer them just resonated to my heart, because I think that it was a large part of who I was, just constantly trying to protect them.
Thank you so much. And I feel that. I think many of us as mothers, or whether biologically or whether just raising other people's children, supporting other people's children, probably that resonated with us as well. So thank you for sharing. Jefferson, what piece resonated with you from the text?
It is from Omari's mouth and his mind and his spirit. I'm talking biased education, Ma. I'm talking disrespect. He knows he was saying something, asking me in that room, in that way, in front of all those students on that issue. He was saying something directly to me. I know he was. And that speaks to me because I am a product of Baltimore City Public Schools. I graduated from Baltimore City College. But prior to that, I went to a private school in Baltimore City. I went to Gilman. And I know what it is to me and all 3 of my siblings. All 4 of us went to private schools. Only one of us graduated from private school. And I know for a fact that all of us have experienced that sort of otherness, being in a sea of being one of few, if there are any others, minorities or Black folks in particular, in that classroom, and being singled out. It's like you can describe it, but unless your audience has experienced it, they may miss exactly what your point is. And that's what Omari is getting at. He just needs to be heard and acknowledge that this systemic and this paragraph, this piece of text right here it's a larger issue, obviously, and this whole play is. So it's emblematic of this student knowing that he is being singled out in such a negative way and putting voice to that. It is an amazing thing that Ms. Morisseau has written and put out there on stage, giving voice to those who usually don't have a voice on the American stage, so that we can have this sort of dialogue about this issue on Juneteenth.
Thank you, Jefferson. I definitely feel what you're saying. Having been there myself, having seen my son go through it, I think we not only are we celebrating Juneteenth, but looking back at just last year or anything from 2016 to 2020, and the changes in the environment around all of us, even if it weren't private school, but feeling those what we call microaggressions. Um, as adults is hard, but imagining Omari going through it as a child who is still developing his own identity, that is definitely something to think about. Thank you. And speaking of someone who might be closer in age to Omari, Jamira, can you bring to us what was the piece of text that appealed to you the most?
After watching, well, while watching the play, like there was a security guard who by the name of Dunn, and he interacts with the students. Other than the teachers, I feel like he would interact with them the most because throughout the day in school, you would pass by the security guard almost every turn that you would go, you would pass the security guard. And I know that from personal experience being in Baltimore City Public Schools my whole entire life. We are so heavily secure. We have so many security officers inside the building, and I feel like you can develop a nice strong relationship with them. But what really stood out to me was this quote, right? This whole entire line right here. Gotta know what they carry in them. The resentment and the rage, there's a legacy in that. Source of those fights is older than the bricks of this building, but nobody's doing the research. You got a bunch of parents, teachers, politicians, whoever trying to understand these kids. But how you going to understand a book you only skimming? After listening to this whole line and just like I felt like kind of like shaking up a little bit about it because it's like I speak on these things every day in every meeting that I have is and I experience this personally with going into Baltimore City public schools. There's like always already a huge gap in the school system from underfunding, not the proper teachers, and just so many different issues. And specifically in our communities that we live in, we experience so many different things that a lot of people like to call average childhood experiences or just everyday things that may even be walking down the street. And I know personally I deal with many issues and then I have to go to school the next day. But like hearing that whole entire quote is just like to understand that security officers or just even other people understand that we go through different things stood out to me. And it's just I also wanted to say how it's like whenever we go into a school building, we have to automatically put on a facade, and it's just like we experience so many different things building up to the school day and have to repeat over to the next day and going into school. Like at home, you can be dealing with a personal issue at home and then living in a broken household and so many different things going on. Maybe have a parent who has a substance abuse problem or anything. In Baltimore City, the food problem and food insecurity, not having proper nutrients in your system, and then maybe even struggling in school, violence up and forth, back and forth down the street, or something happening outside. For me, I live from experience living through these things, and it's just like so many things at once. You're dealing with so much pressure, and then school issues as well, home issues, parent issues, so many different things, and you have to go to school the next day to in the classroom that's already have so many different issues with underfunding, not the proper teachers, and it's just like I feel like there's such a there's a lack of understanding between teachers and students is because of course they have to do their job, but it's like how can you do your job when a student is already trying to tackle 5,000 more jobs in their head currently? And I feel like mental health is such a huge part of that whole entire conversation, and just being a student in school in a city school at a public school at that.
That is a lot to unpack, Jamira, and I definitely feel you on that. I appreciate your candor and your honesty with just a piece of as Dunn said, you're only looking at the cover, the outside, whereas you gave us a little glimpse onto the inside, and I appreciate that. Bronwyn, what piece resonated the most with you?
Well, first off, I got to really give a shout out to Jamira. I'm not sure I need to really say anything else. And maybe we need to just stop and listen to her. But I want to follow up. I think it was maybe around the same part. Done once again, the quote, the security guard, I think had a lot of insight into what was going on with the school as well as the students. And it was very interesting. He said a lot of things throughout this play about how he was the one, making the minimum wage and that type of thing. But no one was really seeking him out to really, I think, talk to him. And it was very clear he knew a lot of students and had a real rapport with them. So once again, Dunn, really spoke to me. And the one quick sentence was, how are you going to stop it if you don't know the source? And it's just what Jamira said. It's just what she said, is that many of the students in Baltimore City schools, as well as other schools, are coming in with so many needs that they, for years and years, we put this on the city schools as if they were an island to themselves for them to try to solve this. When this is our problem, we need to be stepping up and working with city schools and bringing in either programs to be supportive of not just students, but teachers are going through a lot too. Now, we can talk about that in terms of the pandemic and all of that, but also our administrators who are trying to hang in there. I mean, one way that I met Tammy, and Tammy, I hope you don't mind me sharing this, about you. You know how much I really do love you. But, Tammy was at a school before Renaissance that in 1 year, 4 of her students were killed. Imagine her getting these calls, and I can't imagine it, Tammy, because and I don't know her sons, but imagine her getting these calls, because that's what our principals get, these phone calls from Baltimore City Police, lots of times because they can somehow get to the principal maybe before the parent to say, we need your help in identifying this person, this body that we have. And if you have any information on parents and how to reach them, we give them an impossible job, the schools, telling them basically to do it on their own. And that's why I'm excited that City Schools has a community school model.
Thank you, Bronwyn. Thank you. And it's interesting because what you're describing is how we as the community has started to evolve to support the schools just as much as the schools have evolved. I mean, I was a classroom teacher in the early 90s here in Baltimore City, and I worked in the schools for over a decade. I still work with the schools, and seeing the community school model and things that are happening now compared to early 90s, we all know I taught first grade. The first year kindergarten was made mandatory. So none of my kids had come to first grade. And it was also the first year that crack babies entered the classroom. So the children that we had been, when I was doing rotations, because I eventually became a doctor, but I stopped and became a teacher for a minute. And the children that we were seeing in the emergency room 5 and 6 years before being born were now in the classroom. And that was when the school system had to start to realize that shifts needed to be made. And so now to see though that the community is embracing the schools just as much as is definitely giving me hope that we might finally come towards this. But Jefferson and Tamitha, the role that you each have played as people in the Baltimore City community has evolved over the years as well. Like, I mean, my role has changed, and I know that yours specifically has changed. So this question is specifically for the two of you, if you can reflect on your personal journey and how you see that reflected in this play. And I'm going to come to Jefferson first this time.
I would say that my role, I've had different roles as you speak on, but I would absolutely say that my personal mission has remained the same. And that has been, how can I be of service in some sort of way to make our collective existence better? And so, yes, it has changed. I dare say it has evolved, but it definitely has changed. I have written some notes. So I'm going to refer to them, but it definitely comes from my heart and my spirit. As a police officer and juvenile counselor, probation officer with the state of Maryland, I saw up close the systemic frailties and failures that specifically target Black families and children. And at times, I felt instead of being an agent for positive change, which is the why of my becoming part of the system, I was simply a tool to maintain the status quo of a system designed to suppress and oppress. So it was within this context that I had to figure out the best way that I can serve and do my best to help change, to help people. And as a theater artist, um, we we are agents of change. And at its very core, art saves lives, it changes lives, it is community building, and it can be transcendent and transformative. So that's what has brought me here today, June 19th, 2021, through all of the evolutions, all the different changes, all the different paths that I've stepped upon. And here in this room with these remarkable, remarkable women, Black women, and we're talking about community, we're talking about change. This is Baltimore. And I know I may digress in this moment, but it's all connected. This is Baltimore. And this is the city that I love. Now, we get all kinds of, I don't need to go into, but this right here is Baltimore. Miss Queen, Jamira Queen, oh my God, you got me. I got my tissue here because, and it's not tears of, it's tears of hope. And after the year and a half, two or plus years that well, really it started in 2016 and earlier, but after all that we have traversed and the journey, the paths that we have walked collectively, I have hope. And you, Miss Queen, are giving that in such a beautiful way. And I am grateful to you for that. I just wanted to take that moment. It's all connected. I know it, but it's all connected. So
I like your connections, Jefferson, and ashe to what you said, Miss Queen. We definitely give you your props in this moment. And Tamitha, before I come to you, I just want to jump over to Dr. Jenna a quick second. So, Dr. Jenna, you had something that you wanted to, not Dr. Jenna, I'm sorry, Jamira had something that she actually wanted to add. I'm just too excited. Jamira, so as we give you your honor, you had a comment that you wanted to bring up at this moment, and I want to give you that opportunity to do so.
Yeah, sorry about that. And Miss Maiden, like I would the line that you read from the play, it really stood out to me because it's like I experience it on it like daily, and I also wanted to like talk about more about how advising and discipline is like given at Baltimore City Public Schools or just schools in general. And I feel like where you said I'm policing the students or helping the students without understanding the source. And I feel like it's so much deeper than that. And for me, it's like the labels that they put on the students and already saying that a student is a problem child or is like having different kinds of anger issues and just maybe acting out in class, maybe getting into fights or not even under it be having the abilities to understand the content that they're learning in the schoolroom. And I feel like that's such a huge issue, and there's so many ideas, there's so many things that like things you can say about a student that are like that shows those kind of things. But I feel like there's so many more things to the root of it, and that can like there's so many things to the root of it, and that broadcasts in so many different ways. And I feel like, well, after learning from my professor at the University of Maryland School of Social Work, Dr. Warren Howard, he explained to me more about just my mental health everything. And I feel like, well, I understand when he first told me that a huge symptom of depression is anger, and people forget that at times. And it's just like younger people, we have emotions as well. And I feel like sometimes people may dismiss those emotions, especially in a school building. And it's just anger is such a huge thing. If you're facing maybe hunger, living in a household or not understanding different skills on a daily basis, And it's just like, you're going to be angry. You're going to have emotions to it. You're going to have an emotional response. And then going to school where teachers, they automatically are not equipped to really teach those students. And they immediately say, oh, this student is angry, we're going to send him to the principal's office, without understanding him or trying to really break down the root to why it happens. And there's so many systematic things, environmental things, mental things, and just racial things that come into play with that anger, and just the way that the response that they have, it's going to be different. And I want to just help teachers understand that when you automatically put a label on the student, that label follows them for years and years. If you constantly tell a person that you're a problem child, you're acting out, you're disrespectful, they're going to start believing that, they're going to start manifesting those things and acting as so for the rest of their life. And I feel like that's such a huge problem, because if you keep embedding that into that child's head, once they grow up, they're going to continue to be a part of the cycle that's happening. And I just want to like bring awareness to that issue, because your word choice, another thing Mr. Oren told me, that your word choice is such key. If whether it be presenting, teaching, your word choice is so key. And words can really follow you for the rest of your life. And I feel like having those people at a young age, starting in kindergarten, putting you in timeouts, isolating you from the rest of the class, can really manifest into your greater years as you develop in high school. And those problems will never be able to be solved, because first of all, you don't have the proper resources to solve those issues. And then you already have that mindset of it's not going to work out. So I just wanted to break into that, and feel free to comment on it. I just wanted to really get it out of my head before it went on to the next thing.
I appreciate you getting it out of your head. It reminds me when I was in the classroom, um, something that a senior teacher to me, I won't call her old, had said was, don't look at their cumulative records until after the first month of school. Look, like, of course, make sure if the child needs, like accommodations, if they aren't have a special education IEP or whatever, look at that, because you don't want to deny a child their accommodations. But don't look at the cumulative record until after you have that child in your classroom for a month. Because just like you're saying, Jamira, that record is traveling. And we all know that we're experiencing things. So if you write down something that, yes, the child might have done, or the child might have their experience, and that becomes, you've given that child that label that's outside of them, then you perpetuate that label the next year in their school. And I would always say, I would not look at that cumulative record for at least a month. And sometimes I wouldn't even look at it until it was close to the next year, when it was time for me to put things in that cumulative record, because it's a cumulative record. It's not telling me what they can do today. It's not telling me whether or not this past summer this child had some wonderful experiences that prepare them now in a way they weren't prepared for school last year. It's not telling me that cumulative record is giving a teacher less than actually looking a Miss Queen in the face and learning who you are today in this school. That record means nothing. And you're right, but the record is what carries. And if you don't take the time to learn the person, you perpetuate all of that negativity that might be in there. Whereas you might be sowing a new seed that changes that person's direction in that year. And I appreciate you, Jamira, for bringing that out, that we should do that. Tamitha, I'm going to circle back to you and your personal journey. Jamira gave us a piece of her personal journey as well, but I really want to hear a little bit more about yours.
So I would say that like with Jefferson, that I don't think it necessarily evolved. I think it shifted or changed. I think my purpose for coming into this work will always remain the same, and to bring about positivity for young people. And that advocacy work was the beginning, where I advocated for my own children, and then later became a teacher, and then later became a principal, right? And in my role as a principal, as Ms. Brogdon has brought up, I've worked in some of the toughest schools in Baltimore City public schools, and that was by choice. And I lost 7 students over a matter of 18 months. And you're right, the mental health of staff and students is very key to how we service children. So hurt people, love people, right? So we have to understand that teachers and administrators also bring baggage to work every day. They're also dealing with domestic violence. They're also dealing with homelessness. They're also dealing with mental health issues and unresolved parental issues when they were children. So we bring all of this to the table when we come to the workplace. So, and then in our culture, there is a community that tough love. I'm going to get more from you as a Black person if I expect more tougher love from you, right? Not knowing that sometimes we're actually hurting you. So I don't think that my position necessarily again evolved. I believe it shifted. And when I say that it shifted, my dissertation is on the secondary stress, the traumatic experiences of urban school leaders, right? So that secondary stress not only impacts teachers, and principals, it impacts the entire community, right? When you have a school community that's experiencing multiple deaths in one school year, what help is available for them, right? Where is this resources for them so now that they can step back the next day in front of children and have those issues resolved? Or does it mean that we need to be treated like the police officers, that we need to take some time and step away? So now that we can be healthier and we come back and helping those, because we have to grieve those relationships as well. And I think that people forget that we're human beings and that there is a process that we have to also go through. And in that process, are we aware enough to what we're doing to children? So I had to reflect, even in my discipline policy and how I implemented the discipline policy. I had to really reflect. Was I suspending more males than I was suspending females? Was I suspending more special ed kids than I was suspending other regular ed kids? Did I have a bias towards the females, or did I have a bias towards the males? I had to constantly look at me as a school leader and how I was navigating the theme, because that's what I did. I was the orchestrator of the theme in that culture at my school. So how was I at the top doing this to my staff and my students? And it was a day that I was assaulted by a kid that I had to really reflect, and my feelings was hurt, and I was emotional, and I want charges pressed, and I know this story so well because you hit me. How dare you put your hands on me, right? My feelings was hurt. I was not hurt. And in that, I had to really look at what was in the best interest of that child. What was the root cause, like Jamira talked about, that led to her to believe that she needed to hit me? Or what did I do to trigger that behavior? So it was no longer about the child, it was about me. How did I bring this on? What did I miss? Were there signs before and I just overlooked those signs? To this day, me and that student are best of friends. That's my bonus daughter because I don't have a daughter, right? So the reality of it is we really, really have to begin to reflect on ourselves. But I'm going to tell you, I had to, by virtue of a student, go to therapy. One of my students recommended. She said, "Oh, Miss Woodhouse, something wrong with you. I think you may be a little touched. You may be a little bipolar. I'm gonna need you to go get some therapy," because I literally was going through grieving. And when I moved to Renaissance, I had to deal with another loss of losing a school that I had built, right? And one of the new students at Renaissance said, "Oh, I think you need some therapy." And I had to listen to the voice of the babe and go get some therapy. And guess what, y'all? In the back and in the midst of all of them deaths, I lost my mom. And then on my birthday of last year, I lost my dad. So when she said I needed to go some therapy, she knew more about me than I knew about me, which led me to believe that guess what? They're watching us. And it's very important for us to know that the children, the babies in the village are watching us and what we do. So now I say, "Oh, I got therapy. I got to go get on Zoom." And she's so happy when I say I'm going to therapy because she wants to make sure that I am okay, which is very important to her. So, because they don't want another principal, they don't want another teacher, they want to keep the relationships that they have, and we have to take that in consideration. So, I'm sorry if I went on, but that's how my role and has shifted over the years.
And I appreciate that. And I say this all the time, and I've said it more in, I'd say, the past 9 of the past 15 months that we've been in this pandemic. Who heals the healers? We hold space for everyone. We hold space for our students. We hold space for our families. We hold space for everyone else. But when do we stop? Because we are grieving. We are in the midst of the pandemic, just like everyone else. Who heals the healers? So taking that opportunity to go to therapy, that is what you needed in that moment. For some of us, it is recognizing that we need to walk and be a part of nature. We need to stand on the earth and ground ourselves, whatever it is. But as healers, and artists are healers, as what, teachers, administrators, artists are healers. When everything shut down, what did everybody go? Wait, but I gotta turn the D nights on CQ. I need music, or I need art, or I need to do this, I need to do that, because I'm in my house. And the only thing you still had left was art, because art is healing. And so with that, you're speaking of finding a resource for yourself. And the panelists, y'all just gonna have to flow with me. I'm jumping around a little bit here, but I want to come to Bronwyn for a minute, because we're talking about the resources that we need and the resources that our city needs. The play highlighted areas where resources are definitely needed in our city. So Bronwyn, what resources do you see that we need for us as educators, as parents, as students, as people who believe in the hope of our children? What are some of the resources that you see that we need? And what is some of the impactful work that's giving you hope that's being done as well?
So let me first thank Tammy, because she really revealed a lot just now. She put herself out there. And I've kind of gone through a lot of that. I wasn't going to reveal that about Tammy. She revealed a lot of that to me privately, and with a lot of angst as to what was going on and what she was seeing. I think that it's important for us to hear and learn from not just Jamira, who is doing a great job teaching us and leading us here, which gives us all a lot of hope, but also Tammy, who is really speaking about the need of the teachers, the administrators, as well as the Duns that, done in the play, who was the security guard. It could also be the cleaning people, but also that first question that people put out there, about the Black moms. So part of what we do, and I'm not saying it's the best thing or whatever, is that I hire social workers to work in 5 schools in the neighborhood of Upton Druid Heights, which many of you know is in West Baltimore, and really believe that we want to be partners with the schools to provide some of the support that they need. So you have at times some social workers in schools, but they're there, and I think principal would say, and Jamira, that they're there primarily for the students, and they're needed for the students. Part of what I like to see us doing more of is having even support groups for our principals or the staff, as well as what's going on at schools. What we haven't talked about are some of the things that we've tried to implement with I was going to say Dr. Woodhouse. That's you there, Tammy. But anyway, with Dr. Woodhouse is things like restorative justice, of doing circles where students will come up to the teacher, and before, if you looked at the play, Omari said to his mother at one point in the play, he didn't want to be the Black in the room. And the teacher was like, well, what did you feel about, the book that we're reading? He could have said, as soon as he walked into the room, I need to do a circle, which would say to the teacher and everybody, if you're trained in it, let's sit down and talk about, he has something he wants to say to us. And he would have felt safe in that circle to be able to say, Just because we reading this Invisible Man or whatever the book was, I'm sorry, I can't really recall which one, you know, I'm not going to be the black in the room. I'm the only black student in the room, but I'm not going to speak for all the black people in America. And that should have been respected. And it would have also given the opportunity for other students to maybe speak up and help protect him and to say, I may not be black or whatever, but I understand that. So, I got to really say that the other thing is that city schools has really been changing policies a lot, which we haven't really addressed, so that we don't see as much as the blatant policy that you saw in that private school in the play, which is basically a zero tolerance. You did one thing, you're out. They could have also done support groups for parents. I would love it if we could, in the schools we work in, have support groups. What we're finding during this pandemic is that we're doing this via, what we're doing right now, Zoom, and we're getting a lot of parents that want to talk, via Zoom on a lot of these things. The other things are things that Jamira said. Kids come to school with needing food. We work with Tamitha to make sure that there's a washer and dryer in her school, that there are clothes in the school, so students didn't feel, that they couldn't come to school because they didn't have clean clothes or whatever. So we work with them to make sure that, every month we're feeding people. And then if the kids come in, we also are able to feed them during the day. They can take food home with them and that type of thing. And we also try to work with parents around jobs. So we're doing a lot of that people need. But also, I think, we also can't forget the teachers and the need of the teachers and how do we support the village.
Perfect. I'm actually going to jump back to Jamira now because I think, especially with your words, how do we support the village right now? That brings me right back to Jamira. And can you talk to us about, with everything that you've already described for us, how do we, engage the village in your case? Like, how did you engage the village and what did you still need from the village? What helped you?
Well, growing up, okay. Before hitting that specific point, I had a huge response to Mrs. Madden and Mrs. Woodhouse response about just having like supporting the village as a whole before talking about my personal village. When you talked about social workers in the school and having those people having those social workers and support for teachers and students and everything, I feel like also a key point would be just as well as having it's not about only the quality of social workers, it's also that the social workers are sometimes not able to do their job is because the students are not used to it. Because in our community, we don't grieve, we adapt. We experience so many different things on a daily basis, and it's just been happening for so long. We develop a numbness and a lack of emotion to it. So there's no way for social workers and everybody to do their job. So it's like you're never going to be able to really break down and get that one-on-one session with a student and expect them to open up to you if we're not used to opening up. If we're used to being from kindergarten all the way up until your junior year of high school, from never really having this a support system or never really understanding what it means to heal from different things that have impacted you or just have those conversations. And then I feel like having the support is everyone there. It's okay. It's a quality. It's great and everything, but letting the students have the understanding that it is important and the importance of having those people in your life. And Omari had just his whole everything, like just how he carried himself and what appeared very guarded. And I feel like I felt that way personally. And I see that in many cases in school and just living. And it's just like, we carry this huge guard on us and guard on our shoulders just because we don't really know how to express ourselves. I've been having mental health counselors in my life for a long time. And it's just like, I still experience so many different things. And it's like, I've been like turning myself down for so long and turning my emotions down for so long. I had this huge guard up on myself. And it's just like, how can you really break that down if you've been doing that for so long? And back to Dr. Dr. Nadine, sorry, I don't want to, Dr. Finnegan Carr said, sorry about that, I didn't want to, the respect level. But my village for me growing up was like, I've experienced so many different things and many different childhood ages. That's what makes me who I am today. But although I experienced so many things at an early age, and because of it, I was able to receive like different counselors from the city at a young age. Because of something that happened with my brother, we received a therapist, and from there, countless of social workers and mentors growing up. And it's just like having that village behind me. No matter what I went through at home, I just always had those role models in my life at an early age. And I feel like without having those people in my life and the quality of those people, I would not be where I am today. I Miss Chantel James Smith, that's her name, and that's like who I really like connect with on a different level. She doesn't mind me saying her name, by the way. But growing up, I've had her for 8 years of my life. She was a therapist for me, and just experiencing so many different things at home, and just having her take me outside of my zip code and show me what I can be in life, what I can experience, and having that role model of a luxury educated Black woman in my life was such a huge thing for me. And having the quality and having her help me understand that everything that I'm going through and everything that I've went through, it's such because of a bigger issue, and there's so many generational things behind it, and so many historical things behind it. And having her in my life and showing me that at a young age, helped me be able to use my voice now and use my platform as much as possible, so I can become that social worker and therapist that I had in my life, and be able to help younger girls like who went through the same thing I went through. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Jamira. Thank you. And I think I'm going to end us on that positive note right now and turn it back over to Brianna and Dr. Jenna to move us into the next part of what we're doing this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nay, and just respect to the incredible spirit we have in this space. And it's buoying and it's challenging in all of the right ways. And deep appreciation to each of you. We're going to come back into the room and just take a moment to breathe. So I'm not going to put a lot on that. Just take a quiet moment in your own space to kind of breathe in, breathe out. And then we're going to move forward with some questions from the audience for everyone. So we'll just take a moment to breathe together. Awesome. As artists, we understand, and I'm sure that as a principal, as a doctor, as a student, breath is our friend. Breath is a friend. And sometimes that's all we have. So we have some questions that have come in while the conversation has been popping to bring forward. And these are questions that the panelists in particular might have unique insight into. And also there might be other experiences in this room from other folks in this room that would like to chime in and add their voice to the conversation. And I just want this to be an invitation to do so, that we are all on a panel, if you will. We've got a few folks who can speak to things in particular, but Judy, Ruth, Linda, Lisa, Robin, Kelly, Holly, Sarah, Rachel, welcome to the panel. Corey, welcome to the panel. Because it can be a space that we all can share in. And invite you to turn your camera on if inclined. So I'll just get us started with the first question that I'd like to put to the room. And then of course the panel can step into the space and share thoughts. And then we'll take a few others and we'll open the space a little bit more as we head into our last bit of time together. One of the questions that actually came to us, which I really appreciate, is the question that Anthony actually brought forward prior to the discussion that we saw in the Mentimeter at the beginning, which was, I'm interested to hear reflections on how do you define or how do you explain the role of the teacher in a student's wellness journey. So we had great insight from Jamira about the priority and the value and the impact of an adult that looks like her, valuing that intentionally. But there's a lot of different teachers in the world. There's a lot of philosophies in the world. There's a lot of students that come in conflict with those philosophies. So I'm interested in this room exploring what you personally see as the role of the teacher in wellness. Anyone can step forward and share some insight into that question.
So I want to jump in and respond, because that one really came out for me, and it actually to me, the answer to this question is in our room agreements at the beginning. So meeting the student where they are. Like we said, in this room, we would meet each other where we are in this moment. And I think we really need to see, where is the student and what is it that they need healed? You know, like when we're saying what if anything, because sometimes we want to fix something that they don't see as a problem, but what is the actual problem we're not seeing. And so I think the first thing we need to do as teachers is even understand, what is it? Besides being a professor and everything else, I'm also a yoga and meditation instructor. And one of the things that I say a lot is, where are you? Where are you today? Where do you need healing today? And sometimes, people can't explain that, express that. And giving them a time to even say, no one's ever asked me that before. And we have such and I mean, it's Juneteenth, right? So we can say it. We have such a white, heteronormative, centering view of wellness. And so typically what we do is we look and we say, oh, I know your mother doesn't have food in the house. You need to eat. You'll be fine after you eat. You know what? I don't need to eat. Maybe I'm one of those people that doesn't need to eat that often. That's not actually my problem. My problem is that no one is listening to me and I don't feel heard. And telling me that my problem is that I'm hungry isn't helping me. And it's actually making me worse. It's actually making my experience here worse, because I said no one is listening to me and now you're not listening to me. And so the self-fulfilling prophecy that we pointed out when Jamira was speaking and saying, you speak negative and evil into someone's life and they start to fulfill that evil. But in this case, they're saying no one listens to me, and then you don't listen, and then you actually are perpetuating what they are thinking about you. You're not going to listen to me. That person is not going to want to know what I have to say. No one wants to know what my experience is. So how can you understand what I need to be well when you don't even understand how I am unwell? Because if you're looking at it from that white centering heteronormative frame, then you're looking for an illness with your own frame that I don't think I have. And what I'm actually experiencing and what I actually need to be healed from may not be that. So I think as people, not just as teachers, but as people, we need to know, what is it that our students need? And in most cases, the answer is love. In most cases, you give love first, and the wellness will come, because I know that you love me. I know that you care for me. I know that you're actually honestly invested in my well-being. If you're invested in my well-being, then I am willing to explain to you what I need to get well.
Thank God this is being recorded. Thank God. Seriously, I'm just going to play this back. This is a playback moment, right? That's not re-scripting, the reframing, the positive self-talk of us in our own ways. That's such truth. Thank you.
I would like to jump in.
Please.
I think that we have to go back to and just coming from a system structure. What does the job description say, right? Because we're dealing with so many folks. What does the certification process says when we're leading to start working with children? Because it's an occupation, right? And so if I come into this looking at this as a job, then how does my job description help mold more of this type of work? And now, am I even qualified for it? Right? So, how is this being infused into what I do on a daily basis? Especially for those of us who say, hey, I'm supposed to go in there, write a lesson plan, give you an assessment, and go home, right? I'm not supposed to love you and nurture on you. That's your parents' job, right? So then you have those who come in and says, "Hey, I got snacks in my bags. I got stickers over here. I have, and then you have those. So how does society shape what teachers are supposed to do today? And what does it look like on that systemic structure level? Does certification talk about wellness? And then what does wellness look like versus safety? Because all of the job descriptions that I've read said that I need to ensure that my students are safe. So, what is the definition? And are we using them interchangeably, or are we really separating the two and defining what wellness is for educators? I think it has to be defined because I think there's too many school of thoughts out here about what a teacher is supposed to do for us to get lost. And I don't think that, and I think that teachers have to be well in order to assist somebody to be well. And it's very hard. I'm gonna go back to the Black culture because I can remember that teacher that I had and believe that because he was giving me tough love, that he was doing right by me, but he was actually hurting me because that tough love is not what I needed. Because I had two parents who were very disciplinaries, and I had consequences. So all that extra you were giving me was really breaking me. So again, what is the definition of wellness for educators? And I'm going to take it another level. And how do we tie that to certification? Because if you look at Maryland certification requirements right now, it does say, hey, to work with a special ed student, you need to take at least one intro to special ed class. So why are we not taking a wellness class to become recertified so that we're okay and we understand the definition of our role in this field of healing folks?
Can I speak on that for a minute? First of all, I want to say thank you to the panel, to everyone that's in this room right now. It's very important. And if I could only find a Kleenex, things would be a lot different for me. But just to kind of relate to what everyone is saying about the needing of love. I too, well, I went to school in the 80s and early 90s, and I too had very stern parents who obviously loved me, but believed in tough love as well. It wasn't until I was in fourth grade and Dr. Roundtree at Medfield Heights Elementary School showed me compassion and nurtured me without even really having to do anything other than noticing the talents that I had and recommending me for a gifted and talented program and recommending me for dramatic reading and all those things that I'd never thought that I would want to do because I'm a Virgo, so I'm a little shy. And that was definitely the turning point. That was what sort of started to mold me into the man that I can say that I am today. And without that, and without this conversation helping me remember those things, I can honestly say I don't think I would be the same person that I am. So thank you all for that.
I want to step in and give a panel to the group, or give a question to the group, not the panel. I love the idea of us doing this event here on Juneteenth And I want to sort of zoom out a little bit and talk about, in the context of Juneteenth, what does it look like to have responsive teaching? And what does it look like to have critical race theory? I know we talked about that. We talked about all that buzzword stuff in the classroom. And how are your feelings on that? What do y'all feel about that?
Can we start by saying that culturally responsive teaching and culturally responsive pedagogy is not new? And this whole argument about critical race theory is hilarious because this is not a new thing. Like, being responsive to your students, whatever their background is, has been something that is a part of basic pedagogy since pedagogy was invented. You know, if you're working with rural students, you're responsive to the needs of their agrarian life and when they need to be farming versus when they need to be in your classroom. When you are working in urban schools, you adapt appropriately, adapting because you have an influx of immigrant students, you know, in the 20s and 30s from one country, and then the 40s and 50s from another country. This is what teachers do. Like, this whole discussion is bupkis. Like critical race theory, just because we're saying, oh, we have to be responsive to the needs of our Black children. Guess what? We've been saying that since the 70s. Like, I remember sitting in sitting in class learning pedagogy and learning about how to be a culturally responsive teacher, because at the time I didn't know if I'd end up in a school in Baltimore City, Harford County. You're just going to learn how to teach and how to be responsive to your students. And so, and not to dismiss that, because we are, this is Juneteenth. And the reason that this whole critical race theory being tied into responsive teaching discussion is coming up is because of the racial reckoning that this country is trying to avoid having, which started in 1954, but really people think happened in 2020. And it really started before that in 1619 when, Plymouth Rock fell on us, is what it feels like. But, so it really is, the conversation makes no sense if you know what teachers do. But it's also, when the pandemic started and everybody was like, how are we going to send the children back to school? We're going to, separate them by 6 feet and do this. I was like, have you ever met a child? Like, have you ever tried to not hug a 6-year-old? Have you ever tried to tell an 8-year-old to sit in a seat for longer than 45 minutes? Like, you just don't know teaching if the issue is,
oh my gosh,
culturally responsive piece. Like this, like Sarah's laughing at me because she knows. I'm like, but it's really a hilarious conversation. You can't teach critical race theory. I wouldn't teach critical race theory to an 8-year-old. I'm teaching them from the book that's Everyone Eats Bread. And we're talking about how there is naan in India and cornbread in the South and biscuits in the North. And we're talking about all the different kinds of bread. And even though we all eat bread, all eat different kinds of bread, we all are the same type of people. That's what you're teaching to little kids. You're not teaching them critical race theory. I was in college before I got to critical race theory. So for Juneteenth, what we need to recognize is that the argument about having responsive teaching and critical race theory is an argument to divide us, when what we really need to do is focus on, what do the kids in front of us need? What do they need? That's it. And I'm going to shut up because I feel like I keep talking.
I find it funny because me and my son had this very conversation this morning, critical race theory versus in Juneteenth. Because, he said, oh, well, they banned critical race theory, but they gave us Juneteenth. So I guess we're supposed to be happy. Right. So this is my son telling me this. And, but when I said, so what do you think about critical race theory? He says, Mom, I will tell you that the history books are a lie and that these companies are shifting the text based on what the school district in the different states. He says, because you go get the same book from Texas and the same book that we have in Baltimore City, it's going to read different. He said, so it's really based on what the politicians and those that are moving this movement want us to know. He said, so I think it's up to us as Black folks to be able to teach our history the way we used to, by parting your grandmother's hair, greasing it, and her telling you the stories of what happened, right? And how do you keep that tradition going? Because that's how we really learned our history, because it's just not in the books. So if we're waiting for this system to put our history in a book, we're fooling ourselves, because our history has been passed down through words, right? And I said to him, I said, you know what? There's a word museum in DC. We're going to take all the kids to the word museum, because that's how our history is passed down, to help them really understand what words mean in our family and in our culture, because it's not written in the books. You know, my family has fought in every single war that this country has had. I've had a member fight since 1914. And guess what? I cannot find their names anywhere because their names have been changed. So I will, and it took my son to really make me realize this, like, Mom, we're not going to find who we are in that book or any other books that a white publishing company creates. And he said, so even for y'all to say, oh, let me have this teacher from Oregon go inside of Baltimore City Public Schools and teach about African American history. It's not happening because it is based on her perception. It is based on what she believes and her interpretation of what she read and what she believes African Americans are. So it does not matter if we're ever going to get at the truth. The truth is within. And I was like, wow, that's why I was running crazy, Brianna, and thought I was late.
You're good. You're having a good and important conversation. That's fine. That's beautiful. Thank you, Tamitha. Oh man. So we're at 2:30. We started a few minutes late. I want to just make sure that we're honoring time, but also I have another question. I'm sure there's other questions or comments in this space. I want to make sure we have the time that we need to ask those. So given we started a few minutes late, we can maybe go just a few minutes over here and see if there's any other comments, reflections, what questions are in the room that we want to make sure get asked.
Feel free to also drop them in the chat if you don't want to come off mute.
I would just like to say thank you to everyone, and thank you for even making this space available for us. And I just pray that more folks begin to start having these types of dialogues, because I think it's so much needed. And especially, again, if I could have this film for the first day of professional development for my teachers, I would love it. And anybody who wants to come and join us for professional development on week 1, I would welcome having you. Thank you so very much. Thank you, Dr. Nay, and I will get your information.
I love it. Bronwyn, let's close. And that's such a wonderful spirit to close within. Feel free.
Just want to say, this entire panel is fantastic. It's almost like you want to bottle them and I would sell it because we run a nonprofit and we need money. But like I said, I've known Nadine a long time. Now you understand why I wanted Tammy Woodhouse, on this panel, because I know her, a little of her history about these 3 sons, because I'm a Black mother I got 2 sons, and we would talk about it. And, we didn't share a lot of things that we've kind of been through together or separately, but people in the community. But, I just want us to remember that kids, the community, teachers, schools really need a lot of support. And it's on us as the community, to really step up and to provide that support. Everybody, we just can't do this alone anymore. And we can't, I read an article this morning, 157 people were killed in Baltimore since January the 1st. We sitting in West Baltimore, Tammy and I actually live close to each other. We sitting in West Baltimore, and right here, I think 2 people have died in 2 days, near where we live. And so I think it's beyond the schools, but this play, which was so finely written, has really brought out a lot of things that I think we need to work on. And I hope it's given a lot of people a lot of pause to think about things and what they can do to really help schools in the future as well as students. So I want to thank Everyman for selecting this as a play, because you certainly have a lot, I'm sure, of a lot of plays you can do. The wonderful actors and actresses that were in the play really brought it home to me. I got a shout out to Jefferson, who really did a fabulous job as Xavier. Of course, Jameer. Yeah, you are the sister, you the best. I'm glad Jameer, is going to social work school, because now I can retire, is a good thing. And then, Nadine, you are always the best, my sister. So thank you so much.
There's a line in the play that has sort of been living in my brain that I kind of can't get out of my head, which is actually from an exchange between Xavier and Naya about parenting. But it's that line, and Jefferson, you might be able to give exact voice to it, but like, with what grip do I hold you with? What's the right grip? And there's a difference of opinions on how tight we hold on to one another, to our children, to each other, to our community, place that question in any context. And it's just been really living in me. And I don't know, but this conversation it's like the quality of hold. Maybe it's not even a grip, right? It's about how we hold each other. And I appreciate, and I am thankful for community members who, in very full and busy lives, carve out time for story and carve out time to show up for each other in story and through story, because that's how we learn, is the stories that we tell. And so thank you so much for maybe not holding the grip so tightly, but holding some space for us today. And this play is so relevant, and we'd love, if you haven't seen it, to be able to have access to it. And Dr. Nay, I got you, so we'll make sure you got a direct line. So it's streaming through July 11th. You can go online, purchase a single ticket to buy it. You can watch it from your kitchen, your bathroom, from your bed. We also are really excited to share with this room a couple more stories that we might be able to explore together in the context of an essential conversation, as our season has been announced for next year. We're coming back. We're going to have a streaming option, and we get to sit together next to people we don't know, and receive story again. And I just cannot tell you what that will mean for all of us who call Everyman our home, to be able to do that. But this is the lineup, so take a moment just to take it in, get excited about some of it, have feelings about some of it. That's all good. And you also can subscribe to the season, which is available now, which is awesome. And then last but certainly not least, we are a home for lifelong learning at Everyman. So just to echo what the work that Promise Heights is doing, our youngest student is 3, our oldest student is 92. And there's always something to be discovered in yourself through creative exploration. And our job is simply to hold space and help guide folks in that work. So if you have a 3 to 13-year-old, a kindergarten through 8th grader, our summer programs are virtual, but they're different than any educational experience that maybe your student has had. So we are literally running a 30th season flash sale moment, 30% off, using this code. Write it down. It's going through June 20th. So one day from today it will end. That's just going online and clicking yes, please, and dropping in that code. Any final words or any other thoughts from anyone else on the panel that you'd like to voice, please do so.
Just as a citizen of Baltimore, a citizen of the world. I thank all of you for your continued work and commitment to the community and all that you offer and give. And this has been just tremendous. And I'm excited about. I've been excited about this play, but also what that bridge is to the community and this sort of dialogue and the change that can come from that. So that's exactly why I do what I do, and I'm honored to be a part of this. So thank you all for giving life to that.
All right, y'all. This is great. This is great. We got some rich, rich, rich stuff happening in our city and in our panel and in our world. And we just appreciative of the folks giving up time today on this June 19th at 2:39. I'd love for us to just give each other some high love and some returning love to you all as you all go your highways and byways, or just in your house and watching some good TV, whatever y'all want to do. It is your day to have. So please enjoy it. And thank you, thank you, thank you.